The state of Tennessee has over 110 million tourists every year, so it's no surprise that there are several theme parks and roller coasters in the state for these tourists to visit. All of Tennessee's operating coasters today can be found in the state's eastern region. There are 27 of them, and many can be found at Dollywood and Pigeon Forge, which has 10. The rest of the state's coasters are mainly alpine coasters, which can be found at smaller parks in the Smoky Mountains region. With a few exceptions, most alpine coasters' purpose is to provide scenic views, but with a very similar ride experience to one another. Let's talk about the 10 best coasters currently operating in Tennessee. Dollywood is co-owned, of course, by country singer Dolly Parton and Hearst Entertainment, so there are naturally themes of music, nature, and Appalachian culture throughout the park. But its oldest roller coaster pays tribute to the firefighters of the area. Blazing Fury is an indoor powered coaster built by the park's own maintenance staff in 1978. The ride begins with an incline which travels past several scenes of firefighters battling flames and rescuing people from their homes. There is even an unexpected scene of an underground lake in a cavern. Eventually, the ride takes 3 drops, which classify it as a true roller coaster. One of them contains the illusion of a near miss with an oncoming train. The finale originally had a splashdown following the final drop, but the water was removed at some point and it now only contains dry track. While the experience is mostly low in excitement, it is a charming, quirky classic at Dollywood, and my score for Blazing Fury is a 6.0 out of 10. Dragonflyer was the first modern Vekoma family suspended coaster to open in the US in 2019, and it is a huge improvement from its predecessors. Unlike the older models that constantly rattle your head between the restraints, Dragonflyer is smooth as glass. It stands 63 feet tall and begins with a 65-foot drop into a tunnel, going past a fountain as you exit the tunnel. Then you enter an overbanked curve, 2 helixes, and a few more turns and dips before returning to the station. It reaches a top speed of 46 miles an hour and has some pretty strong positive G's through the helixes. It's a pretty short ride though, with only about 30 seconds of ride time from the drop to the station. During the ride, you do get some great views and standout moments, so my score for Dragonflyer is a 6.5 out of 10. Rail Runner is a mountain coaster located at Anakeesta, a mountaintop park in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. What sets it apart from other mountain coasters is that its track is only a single rail, making it the first single-rail mountain coaster in the US. While the ride vehicles and restraints aren't designed to handle the extreme forces that other roller coasters endure, they are equipped with a lever so that you can control your own speed. You speed up by pulling back the lever to release the brake and slow down by pushing it forward to engage it. Some mountain coasters start with a long climb up a lift before the fun begins, but on Rail Runner, the party starts right away as you descend into a curved drop down the side of a mountain. You then traverse through more curves and drops in a 1,600-foot race down the mountain, controlling your speed to your heart's desire. With the single rail track, you feel some unique lateral G's as you feel your center of gravity could be thrown off the track at any moment. Then, when you reach the bottom, you have a 400-foot climb back to the station. My score for Rail Runner is a 6.8 out of 10. Going back to Dollywood, we have another first of its kind, as Mystery Mine was the first Gerstlauer Eurofighter to open in the US back in 2007. It's a partially enclosed, heavily themed ride through a doomed mine shaft. There are essentially 3 sections of this ride. It begins with a drop straight into the mine, with a few dips and curves, and a head chopper with a scenery element. This first section is quite rough as you rattle your head against the restraints when going through the curves. Then, for the second section, you climb a vertical lift hill that is followed by a fake-out track, and then some seemingly random mild curves and drops. The false track had a purpose since it was part of the layout prior to it being altered in 2021. This section of the ride is a bit boring, but still manages to be rough somehow with headbanging against the restraints. However, the final section is the best by far. When you enter the building, you begin to travel up the final lift while ominous music plays and you see the top of the mine shaft cave in. Then you're held briefly by a holding brake before some dynamite blasts an opening and you plunge into an 85-foot, 95-degree drop, then a double heartline roll and a dive loop before hitting the brake run. The finale makes up for the rough first two-thirds of the ride, so I give Mystery Mine a score of 7.1 out of 10. We have another Gerstlauer coaster at number 6. This one is Dollywood's launched family coaster, Fire Chaser Express. You ride a fire engine racing to respond to an out-of-control fireworks stand. Like Mystery Mine, its layout is made of 3 sections. The ride begins with a mild launch out of the station, through some curves and a helix. The second section begins with a chain lift, then you wind your way back down and up the side of the hill as you travel through curves, drops, and a couple of airtime hills. For the finale, your fire engine arrives at the fireworks stand as Big Bertha gets set off and you're launched backward through some curves, then back up into the station by means of a switch track. While it's not the fastest or most intense ride in Tennessee, the ride is smooth and purely fun, especially its launches. So for those reasons, I give Fire Chaser Express a 7.5 out of 10. Big Bear Mountain is a first of its kind Vekoma family launch coaster, another first for Dollywood and for Tennessee. It begins with a launch out of the station into an upward curve, followed by a second launch that begins the main portion of the ride. You travel through twists and turns on the side of the hill, over and under some rock work and past a waterfall. There are several airtime hills, although the airtime is pretty mild since it is a family coaster. Then you enter the final rolling launch to reach a top speed of 48 miles an hour and up a steep incline to reach the highest point of the ride of 66 feet. From there, you wind back down through more curves and airtime hills, through a helix and under a pathway before hitting the brake run. Other than the rockwork and waterfall, there isn't really any landscape or theming currently, but the catchy, adventurous soundtrack and voiceover by tour guide Ned Oakley make up for it. It's another purely fun ride that riders of all ages can enjoy. I give Big Bear Mountain a score of 7.9 out of 10. Wild Eagle was the first B&M wing coaster to open in the US back in 2012. You soar on the wings of eagles as the ride takes you 212 feet up the side of the mountain, then into a straight 135-foot drop to reach a top speed of 61 miles an hour. Due to the elevation change going uphill, the drop is much shorter than the lift hill. You then traverse a 110-foot tall vertical loop, the centerpiece of the attraction. Following that, you soar through a rapid-paced set of inversions with a 0G roll, Immelman loop, and a corkscrew. To finish out the ride, you get an airtime hill, left-hand helix, and right-hand helix before hitting the brake run. It is a smooth, graceful, and exciting ride with a beautiful setting. Some people may criticize it for being too mild, but if you want a more intense ride, I recommend sitting on the outside seats or near the back of the trains. Overall, I give Wild Eagle a score of 8.3 out of 10. We've had many firsts in this list, but now we have a last, as Tennessee Tornado was the last new custom looping coaster to be ordered from Aerodynamics. It was, however, the first coaster to kick off a long string of new additions by Dollywood. It opened in 1999, and the park has added a major new coaster every 2 to 5 years since then. The ride is themed to riding an 1800s minecart during a tornado as her cart is thrown about by the wind. The ride begins with a long pre-lift section to reach a 163-foot tall lift hill, then into a right-hand curve for the pre-drop. Then you experience a 128-foot drop through a tunnel in the mountain with great airtime to reach a speed of 63 miles an hour. Once you see daylight again, you're immediately thrust into a 110-foot tall spiral loop, which is the tallest inversion on any aero coaster. When you enter the loop, you are drifting horizontally to the left, but once you hit the top of the loop, you exit to the right, which is a unique sensation. You then take a right-hand overbanked curve into a sidewinder inversion. This has been a surprisingly smooth ride up to this point, but there is one rough moment. You follow the curve with a dip, then back up into the final brake run. You're experiencing negative G's at that point, and the brake run hits hard, which is a bit jarring. Overall, it's a short but sweet ride, somewhat smooth but intense. I give Tennessee Tornado a score of 8.7 out of 10. The wildest ride in the wilderness. Thunderhead is an older GCI wooden coaster which opened at Dollywood in 2004, but it seems to get smoother and better with each passing year. It starts with a brief pre-lift section, then climbs a 100-foot tall lift and descends into a curved drop to reach a top speed of 54 miles an hour. It ascends through an S-curve, then into another curved drop and double up. Thunderhead is built over a valley and makes excellent use of the terrain by descending down into the valley and then back up several times. Following an airtime hill in a banked curve, you pass through the station with a flyby. You drop out of the flyby and descend deeper into the valley with several more curves and bunny hills before hitting the brake run. You get a good mix of forces, positive, negative, and lateral G's, and the Millennium Flyer trains are free and open, which allow you to experience those forces. It may not be the most impressive in terms of height or speed, but it has great pacing and uses its terrain to the fullest. I give Thunderhead a score of 9.0 out of 10. What was once the world's only launched wooden coaster is now just another iBox coaster in RMC's catalog. In my opinion, however, that still puts it in the S tier of roller coasters. It doesn't change the fact that it's the #1 coaster in Tennessee. Lightning Rod has had many changes since it opened in 2016, and some of the biggest were replacing its wooden track with steel track and replacing its launch with a high-speed chain lift. If you want to know more about the history of Lightning Rod and how that relates to RMC's future, please check out my video on this subject. You walk through a garage and into the station to step into your hot rod before ascending the first hill. From 2016 to 2023, this was accomplished by an LSM launch, but in 2024, that launch was replaced by a high-speed chain lift. You dip down into a fake drop before plunging into the real 165-foot, 73-degree drop. You then traverse a giant wave turn and plunge back into the valley below. You enter a twist and shout where you curve up into the right, rapidly twist to the left, and then exit back to the right, shouting the whole time. You get another twist and shout and then a couple airtime hills ascending up the side of the hill. Then the grand finale is the quad down, where you get 4 consecutive airtime hills going back down the mountain. Finally, you take an upward right-hand curve to get to the brake run. Much like Thunderhead, Lightning Rod makes great use of the terrain by dipping in and out of the valley and taking the quad down back down the slope. With the launch still in place, it had relentless speed, pacing, and airtime, but with the chain lift, it still has great pacing, which seems to get better as it goes. In fairness though, I have to score it based on its current status, but I give Lightning Rod a 9.3 out of 10. Those have been my thoughts on the top 10 roller coasters in Tennessee. I want to continue this series with ranking the major coasters in the US states that I've visited, and who knows, maybe countries at some point. Please like the video and comment on your favorite coaster in Tennessee. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on my next voyage.